So today is the geometric sequence, which a geometric sequence you have to multiply by the exact same thing to get the next term. So the only difference is we do have a formula. A sub n equals the first term ratio to the n minus 1. A sub 1 still stands for the first term. R is our new variable. It stands for ratio, and it's found by taking second divided by first, and so on and so forth. But I would recommend using fractions as opposed to decimals, because you could end up with a decimal and it's like 0.666666, and if you drop any of it off, you'll lose part of your answer. N stands for the number of terms, and A sub n stands for the nth term or the last term. So we're used to that, right? We're used to those formulas with the exception of ratio. So the first group of problems, 13 through 16, they're going to look different than the next group. On 13 through 16, you're supposed to name the next two terms. And your first step that I want done is to find the ratio. So I want to see what that is. And then second would be just to multiply by that ratio. Okay, so we have 28, 7, 7 fourths, dot, dot, dot. And again, these are geometric sequences, so you're multiplying by the same thing to get what comes next. So the first thing we want to do is find the ratio. Now, how do we find ratio? Second. And I put it in fraction form, that way I'm not going to lose anything and have to worry about working with decimals. Everybody follow what I did? I put the second one over 28, which that means 7 divided by 28. I'm just not using division symbol, I'm using the fraction bar, which means division. And doesn't that reduce to 1/4? And you're going to find it's easier to work with the fractions than it would be to work with the decimals. Now, once you know what your ratio is, our instructions are to find the next two terms. So I need to multiply by 1/4. So 7 times 1/4 would be 7 sixteenths. 7 sixteenths times 1/4 would be 7 64ths. And there would be your next two answers. So I want to see what the ratio is, and then I want what the next two numbers are. Here's another one for good measure. Let's go with -3, 6, -12, and so on. So the first thing you do is find the ratio. How do I find the ratio?
First divided by
Second divided by.
Second divided by first. So that would be a -2, and that one simplifies nicely. So what would be my next two terms?
24.
-12 times -2 is 24.
Negative 48.
And if you have a negative ratio, what do you notice about the sequence?
it goes negative 5 and
It alternates. Okay, so alternates is the key there. Does anybody need another example of what you're doing on 13 through 16? Next group is 21 through 24. And on this, the instructions are find the first 5 terms. And that's what they're going to give you. So what are they giving you?
ratio.
They're giving you one of the answers, aren't they? So it'll be 12, that's one of them. And you got to fill in the blanks, and how do we fill in the blanks?
Wait times it by the ratio.
So our ratio is 2/3, so I'll do the good old fashioned way. 3 goes into 12 fourths, so I'm going to get 4 times 2 is 8. Then 8 times 2/3, 16 thirds. I'll just keep it here and multiply. Times 2/3 would be 32 ninths. So 32 ninths. Now that times 2/3, 64 over 27. They're very agreeable with those values. So they're going to give you a first term, and they're going to give you the ratio. Another example, you probably don't need to write down, but here's another one. We'll call it example 2. A sub 1 equals a -5. Let's make the ratio be be my next one?
-1,
-1. Next one?
-1/5,
Next one, I'm multiplying by 1/5.
1 -1/5,
Next one?
-1.
And then we have our first 5 terms. So they're giving you 1 point with that ace of 1. Okay, the next group was, what? 27 through 30. On this one it says find the indicated term. They're asking you to find whichever term that they're requesting. Now, this one you could really do 2 different ways. And remember I told you this chapter was a common sense chapter? You can do a lot of things with common sense and not even have to use the formulas. This is probably one of those places where I'd use a little bit of common sense. So they're going to give you a first term. They're going to give you a ratio. And they're going to tell you how far you want it to go. So let's say n equals 6. Now, it's not like the arithmetic. Arithmetic, a lot of times they said find the 100th term, right? Which is doable. But if I have a geometric and I say the 100th term, what are you going to be working with? You're going to work with very, 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 very small numbers, or very, very, very large numbers, depending on whether the ratio is a whole number or a fraction, right? So the more than likely, they're just going to give you not very many to do. So you can do the common sense method, or you can do the formula. So first one, we're going to do this one. We're going to do it both ways, so you can see which one you prefer. So the formula, and if you're using the formula method, you probably want a calculator with you to help out. So I want to find the 6th term, and the first term is 8. The ratio is 1/4. And it's raised to the n, which our n is 6, minus 1. So we have 8 times 1/4, 6 minus 1 is 5. Now, what's 1 to the 5th power? And when I have a fraction, I don't put it in because sometimes the calculators resort to decimals. So I do one at a time. I do the numerator, I do the denominator. So 1 to the 5th is 1, isn't it? 1 times 1, 5 times? And what's 4 to the 5th? Now that's where you may want to use your power key on your calculator to get the answer, but I think it's 1,024.
Yeah.
Then what would we do when we multiply 8 times 1,024? You can reduce by, I think 8 goes in there. See if 1,024 divides by 8. What was it? 128. So we found out the 6th term is 1 over 128. Does everybody concur with that? Okay, now, that's the formula way, common sense way. I know the first term is 8. I want to find the 6th term, so in other words, I want that answer, right? So I start with 8. This is what my goal is, to get this answer. Couldn't I just multiply by 1/4 until I get there? Which with the arithmetic, I mentioned you could keep adding until you got there, but if you're going 100 terms, you'd get tired of doing that. But for 6 terms, I think I can multiply. So if I multiply by 1/4, I'm going to get 2 times 1/4 would be 1/2, times 1/4 would be 1/8, times 1/4 would be 1/32, times 1/4 would be 1 over 128, which did they get the same answer that we got?
Yeah.
So either version would be acceptable. You can either use the formula or you can use common sense to get the answer. So let's do another one, just so we practice.
Which way are we doing it?
You can do whichever way you prefer. You can either use the formula,
On your example though,
there's the formula, or you can use the common sense way.
on your example, which way are we doing it though?
In my example, I'm going to do both. So that way you got extra practice on it. Okay, so let's say the first term is 5. Let's let the ratio be 2/3. And let's n be 5. So first let's do the formula way. So we want the 5th term. When the first term is 5, the ratio is 2/3 raised to the n minus 1 power. So what's 5 minus 1?
4.
So We want 2/3 to the fourth. And remember, when you do a fraction, I don't put the whole fraction in the calculator. I do each numerator and denominator separately, that way I won't go to decimals. 2 to the fourth is what, 16?
Yeah, and then.
And 3 to the fourth is 81?
Yeah.
So I end up with 5 times 16 is 80, so I get 80 over 81. You guys agree with that answer? Now, let's do the common sense way. Since there's 5 numbers, n is 5, I'm gonna have 5 blanks, but the only answer is coming from that 5th blank. So when the first term is 5, what do I gotta do to get there?
10 by 2/3.
Multiply by 2/3, so that's what, 10/3?
Mhm.
Multiply by 2/3, that'd be 20/9. Times another 2 would be
40/27.
40/27. Times another 2 would be
80 over.
80, and times 3 would be 81.
Yeah.
So did we get the same result?
Yes.
So you decide which way you prefer. Or you could do both, and what have you done?
Check it.
Checked your work, which would be great on the test. Okay, now what's our next group? 43 through 45. Through 45. What's means? What's a geometric mean? What do you think? We had arithmetic means. What's the geometric mean? It's what's in between two given numbers. And there could be 2, there could be 3, there could be 4. Only difference is it's geometric, which means you have to multiply to figure out what's in the middle, right? So let's say that I have 12. Well, I better make this work, hadn't I? There we go. So this one we have 3 geometric means, and we want to find all 3. So we need to make use of our formula. So our last term we know, don't we? It's 192. Our first term is 12. The ratio is what we got to find. That's what we're missing. So to find the ratio, how many terms are in this sequence? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 minus 1 would be 4. Now what would we do to solve that for r?
Divide by 12.
Divide by 12. Somebody tell me what 192 divided by 12, if that comes out nice.
16.
16? Now we take the 4th root. And what's the 4th root of 16?
2. Positive 1.
That's what I wanted to hear. If it's an even root, you're going to have multiple sets of blanks. I'm going to have 12. I'm going to go ahead and put them together so you see them. So first, if the ratio is a positive 2, what's next?
14.
No, multiply by 2.
Oh, 24. 48.
96. And if you know if you're done, if you're right, because shouldn't you end up with 192 if you multiply by 2? The second one I'm going to do a negative 2. So 12, this only difference, isn't it the exact same numbers?
Yeah, but positive and negative.
Right, but the signs will be alternated. And if I take a negative 2 times a negative 96, I do get a positive 192. So everybody concur? Another one. So this one, again using our formula, our last term is 127. What's our first term? The ratio we don't know, but how many terms are in this example? 6. So 6 minus 1 is,
7.5
and then what would we do to solve it for r?
divided by 9.
So 127 divided by 9. When you divide with fractions, you invert and multiply. So I'm going to end up with 1 over 3, 6, 343? Or is it 2? No, it's 243. So now what do I do to find the
Take the 5th root.
5th root? And I know the fifth root of one's 1, so all I need to find is the fifth root of 243. I believe that's 3.
Positive, negative.
No,
No, it's odd.
it's odd.
It's odd, it's odd.
If it's even, it's when you have positive, negative. Odd is just what you get. Because if this was a negative 1 over 243, it'd been a negative 1/3. So that means we've got to multiply by 1/3. So 9 times 1/3 is 3, times 1/3 is 1, times 1/3 is 1/3, times 1/3 is 1/9, times 1/3 should be 1/27, and it does check out. So everybody follow what we did there? Okay, do you guys have questions on that page 591? Okay, then I'm gonna let you get started. And this is, what chapter is this?